In this present crisis, government is not the solution to our problem. Government is the problem.
Well, there are those famous words. Joining us now is the author of Lessons My Father Taught Me, President Reagan's son, Michael Reagan. Hey, Michael, it's been a long time. I want to ask what feels increasingly to be evident that the deck is stacked against President Trump. Just how much is it stacked against him?
Oh, it's stacked against him greatly. I think the one thing my father had is he did have support in Washington. He had built up that support. He knew how to negotiate. Even though we have a president who wrote The Art of a Deal, there's also the art of government and making those deals. And remember, my father, to get the largest tax break in American history, passed August 13th, 1981, and signed at my father's ranch, was he said to Tip O'Neill, "You tell those Democrats, any one of them that vote for my tax break, I promise not to campaign against them in the next upcoming congressional elections." And that went a long ways. Trump's not there yet.
He's not there yet, in part because your father did have a Tip O'Neill. We're talking about a president right now that has trouble even with his own party, and a lot of people believe that's because he is a true outsider, and the establishment represents both sides, wanting to cling to power, making his job just that much more difficult.
Well, it is very tough for him because he is an outsider. He's not a conservative. He's not a liberal. He's an outsider, and he's always negotiating. I mean, my father didn't have Twitter, didn't have social media, and those, entities that were in the way of everything that's going on in Washington. I don't think that helps him at all. I mean, Donald Trump, I think, would go a long ways if, in fact, he gave up Twitter for a while, because it seems every time he stops tweeting, he gets things done. But when he gets in the middle of everything with his tweets, he changes the course of the news cycle for the day and ultimately helps the media come out against him. My father didn't add issues to the media to come out against him. Sometimes it was just better to stay quiet and say nothing. I'll give you an example. When my father ran for office, what did they call him? A warmonger. They said he was going to start World War III. He was the worst thing that's ever going to happen to America. But you'll never find a speech, you'll never find an op-ed piece that he wrote denying all of those things. He didn't let himself get caught up in the minutia. Donald Trump spends too much time letting himself get caught up in the minutia, and it stops him from accomplishing things. Although
President Trump would argue that all of the quote-unquote experts told him the same thing during the presidential campaign, and he pulled off something that no one, very few, thought, at least the experts, could be possible. So maybe Twitter's a double-edged sword, but I think he's going to keep wielding it. Michael, I want to ask you about President Trump chipping away at former President Obama's legacy, vowing to dismantle Obamacare. We've withdrawn from the Paris Climate Accord. We had the big news on Cuba on Friday, and, of course, a focus on rolling back those regulations. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, those are promises he made during the campaign, but I think most people seriously are not worried about Cuba. They're not worried about a lot of those issues. They're worried about, trust me, health care. They're worried about taxes. They're worried about a lot of other things at the water cooler. I tell you, there's nobody at the water cooler saying, so what do you think we ought to do with Cuba? They're at the water cooler saying, what am I going to do about a job?
I would probably say that some of those Cuban Americans in Florida, particularly those who knew the Castro regime
one state.
I know that's one key state, vital state to becoming president of the United States.
Listen, I've written op-ed pieces. I think people that visit Cuba are nuts, because all you're doing is visiting a human zoo. Those people, when you meet the people there, if you befriend any one of them, you can't say to them, hey, come to my house next week, let's have dinner, because they're not able to leave. So I think what happens is Americans, by going there and visiting, are doing nothing but feeding the animal that's keeping all of those people in a human zoo. And I think it's ridiculous that we even visit there. I think it's ridiculous we have cruise ships that go there, that we have planes that go there, because those people there can't leave. They can't get on the plane. They can't get on a boat and come home. I understand all of those things, but most people outside of Florida are saying, what about a job? I need a job. I need my health care taken care of. And I think it's a great idea.
People also were and are offended about some of those deals that were cut by former President Obama, whether it was the Iranian deal, Cuba. It's these sort of deals that legitimize or attempt to legitimize the kind of country that you just described. And I think all Americans don't want America associated with feeding the beast or the zookeeper, to your point. I do have to quickly ask you about one more. Let me ask you about this, Michael.
I understand that.
Let me change the subject once, because this is critical, and you know about this better than most. Former German Chancellor Helmut Kohl, he passed away last weekend. No. He's remembered for helping to reunite the East and the West, East and West Germany, alongside your father when he delivered this famous line, roll tape.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
A crucial piece of global history, certainly American history. Your thoughts on this, Michael?
Oh, my thoughts on that. It's how many people talk to me every day, and I talk to people. Don't you wish we had those people back in charge? The Maggie Thatchers, Helmut Kohls, the Ronald Reagans, the Lech Walesa, Václav Havels, Pope John Paul. I mean, that was a great group of people, and ultimately Mikhail Gorbachev. They changed the world. We do not have that cadre of leaders in the world today that can get together for anything, not even dinner.
Michael Reagan, thank you very much.
Thank you.